As the end of World War II in Europe reached its final phase, Adolf Hitler and his wife Eva Braun chose to end their lives in the Berlin bunker, preferring suicide to being seized by the fast-approaching Soviet army. Meanwhile, other high-ranking Nazis planned their escape and sought refuge wherever they could. Via the so-called rat lines, a network of escape routes, many of them fled to South America, particularly in Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Argentina, which had a substantial population of German immigrants and held strong connections with Germany during the war, became a haven for many from the Third Reich post-1945. The Argentine president of the time, Juan Perón, an admirer of fascist ideologies, coordinated with intelligence officials and diplomats to create escape routes through Spanish and Italian ports. Assisting in these efforts was the Vatican in Rome. While their primary aim was to aid Catholic refugees of the war, they inadvertently, and sometimes deliberately, aided Nazis in their flight. So let's take a look at the first person on our list. Adolf Eichmann. One of the most notorious Nazis who escaped via those rat lines to South America was Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann is perhaps the most well-known Nazi who escaped justice after World War II. Tasked with planning the logistics of the Holocaust by Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich, Eichmann directed trains, people, equipment, and much else to and from the death camps. At the end of the war, Eichmann was apprehended by American troops and moved between various internment camps designated for SS officials under the alias Otto Eckmann, as provided by his falsified documents. Upon realizing that his true identity was unveiled while undertaking work duties at Cham, Germany, he made a successful escape attempt. He escaped and worked on a German farm for a time. Eichmann then managed to find refuge in Austria. It was a Franciscan monk in Genoa, Italy, who helped him escape by getting him an Argentine visa. He even managed to get a fake passport with the help of the Red Cross. In 1950, he boarded a steamship bound for Argentina, where many Nazis and pro-Nazi German immigrants had settled. He worked at a Mercedes-Benz factory under the name Ricardo Clement for years before the Israeli intelligence organization, Mossad, apprehended him. On May 11, 1960, in a bold maneuver, agents from Mossad kidnapped Eichmann and moved him out of the country by sedating him and masquerading him as a member of an El Al flight crew. Following a 4-month-long trial in Jerusalem, he was found guilty, resulting in the first and only instance of an Israeli court issuing a death sentence. His trial was, and still is, considered the trial of the 20th century. Eichmann is the only person ever executed by the State of Israel. Josef Schwammberger. Schwammberger, an Austrian-born Nazi, wielded authority over 3 labor camps within the Jewish ghettos of the Krakow district in Poland. His presence was signified by a horsewhip and a German shepherd trained to assault prisoners. His reign of terror began in 1942 at the Rozvadov forced labor camp, where hundreds of prisoners succumbed to death, many at the hands of Schwammberger himself. In 1943, he masterminded the large-scale execution of 500 Jewish inmates at the Premzel camp. As Simon Wiesenthal, the renowned Nazi hunter, noted, his path was littered with corpses. Following his arrest in Austria in 1945, Schwammberger fled to Italy in 1948 and subsequently to Argentina, where he openly lived under his actual name and secured citizenship. When West Germany sought his extradition in 1973, Schwammberger disappeared, only to be apprehended by Argentine authorities in 1987 after a tip-off in response to the German government's $300,000 reward. He was extradited to West Germany in 1990 to face trial. Convicted on 7 counts of murder and 32 instances of complicity in murder in 1992, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He passed away behind bars in 2004, aged 92. Josef Mengele. Mengele was the notorious SS doctor at Auschwitz who was fascinated with genetics. This led him to wonder if he could somehow modify people's appearance through surgery, chemistry, or selective breeding. Part of his duties at Auschwitz was as camp doctor. That didn't mean he helped people. Rather, he performed experimental surgery on select groups of people, all without anesthetic. Most died. Mengele also took part in the selections, where incoming prisoners, mostly the Jews of occupied Europe, were chosen for immediate death in the gas chambers or work in the camp. Mengele actually volunteered for this work. At times, he also dropped the gas pellets into the gas chambers, killing more than 1,000 people at a time. After the war, Mengele, aided by a rat line of sympathizers and conservative members of the Catholic Church, escaped to South America, eventually to Brazil. He was hunted for years but never caught. He was thought to be alive in the 1980s, but information came out in 1986, which led investigators to a grave where his bones and teeth were found. He'd had a stroke in 1979 while swimming and drowned. Franz Stangl. Franz Stangl, an Austrian-born SS officer, was the man who commanded the Treblinka extermination camp for the longest time. Before that, he had been involved in other roles in the final solution, as the Nazis called the Holocaust. More people were killed at Treblinka in a shorter time than any other camp, more than 900,000 in just over 2 years. Unlike Auschwitz, Treblinka did not put people to work, other than to dispose of the bodies. It just killed them. Stangl was in command for most of it. After the war, Stangl, like many other infamous Nazi war criminals, escaped to Syria, home to an anti-Semitic fascist regime. Stangl, like Priebke and other Nazis, escaped with the aid of Bishop Hudal and his rat line. Stangl and his family lived in Syria for 3 years before moving to Brazil under his own name. He then got a job at the Volkswagen plant in a southern Brazilian city, where he worked until 1967. No one has ever explained how this mass murderer, who actually registered with the Austrian consulate in nearby Sao Paulo, was not brought to justice until famed Nazi hunter and Holocaust survivor Simon Wiesenthal brought it to the world's attention in 1961. 6 years of diplomatic nonsense stalled his arrest and extradition. In 1970, Stangl was put on trial in Germany and given a life sentence. He died of a heart attack in prison in 1972. Erich Priebke. Priebke was the commanding officer of an SS unit that had been charged with carrying out reprisals for attacks on German soldiers. On March 4, 1944, Priebke and his unit rounded up 335 Italian men and led them into the Ardeatine caves. There, each one was forced to kneel and shot in the back of the head. This was done in rows, and the succeeding victims were brought in and forced to kneel among those already dead because of the lack of space. The Allies knew who was responsible for the massacre. Priebke was held in a British prison camp, but he escaped with the aid of the Austrian bishop in Rome, Alois Hudal, who was discovered years later to have run one of the so-called rat lines to Argentina, helping Nazis escape justice. Given a new identity as Otto Pape, Priebke lived peacefully in Argentina for over 50 years, despite rumors of his being involved in war crimes. In 1994, in one of his most famous interviews, ABC newsman Sam Donaldson confronted Priebke in Argentina. Convinced that he was safe and perhaps proud of his wartime efforts, Priebke admitted his participation in the massacre and was eventually extradited to Italy. After a long, highly politicized trial and appeal that involved rioting by Italian fascists and counter-demonstrators, Priebke only served 5 years. Priebke appealed that, and the appellate court gave him life in prison instead. He died in 2013, aged 100, accepting that he was there and gave the commands to kill, but that he was only following orders. Walter Rauff. Rauff was a notorious SS colonel. From January 1938, he was an aide of Reinhard Heydrich, firstly in the security service also known as the Sicherheitsdienst, and later in the Reich Security Main Office. Rauff was instrumental in creating and using mobile gas chambers to execute prisoners, resulting in an estimated death toll of 100,000 people. In 1943, Rauff oversaw Gestapo and SD activities in northwest Italy from his base in Milan. Despite being arrested in 1945, he managed to escape from an American internment camp in Rimini, Italy, and sought refuge in various Italian convents, reportedly under the protection of Bishop Alois Hudal. Surprisingly, in 1948, Rauff was recruited by Syrian intelligence and served as a military advisor to President Hosni al-Zaim during conflicts with the newly formed State of Israel. However, following a coup, Rauff was forced to leave Syria and found refuge in Lebanon, then Italy, before obtaining a transit pass for Ecuador. After settling in Ecuador with his family and later moving to Chile, Rauff worked as a manager in a king crab cannery and acted as a spy for West Germany between 1958 and 1962. During a visit to Germany in 1960 to claim his Navy pension, Rauff had no issues with the local authorities. His life in Chile was briefly interrupted by an arrest in 1962, but he was released the following year by the country's Supreme Court. Despite multiple extradition requests from West Germany, Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet consistently refused to comply. Rauff passed away in Santiago on 14th of May 1984 due to a heart attack while battling lung cancer. His funeral was attended by German and Chilean mourners who displayed Nazi salutes and chanted Heil Hitler. Well, that's it. We hope you enjoyed our video. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more fascinating history content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.